Hi guys, today we are going to look at graphing sine and cosine and tangent. And so the first thing I want you guys to think about is your unit circle. So get your unit circle out, and what we're going to think about first is what are the sine values or the y values as I go around my circle. We can also think about that as like how far away from the x-axis vertically am I? And so like as we go around, we're going from 0 to 1/2, square root 2 over 2, square root 3 over 2 to 1, and then we start going down, back down to square root 3 over 2, square root 2 over 2, 1/2, back to 0, and then we go, as we go around the negative side, all of those values change and are negative now because we are on the negative side of the x-axis. And so you have a chart, and so you can fill in that chart if that is helpful, or you can just graph as we kind of talk through this. And so if it's helpful to you, I think it's more helpful when we start talking about tangent because there's some math that has to happen. But with sine and with cosine, it's just the y values all the way around and then the x values all the way around. And so first we're going to talk about tangent, or first we're going to talk about sine, excuse me. And on sine, our y value starts at 0. So that's where we're starting here. And so our y value is 0. And then at pi over 6, so along our x-axis here is all of our angle measures. And so we're going vertically, we're going vertically up and vertically down. And so we're starting at 0. And then at pi over 6, my y value is 1/2. And then at pi over 4, my y value is square root 2 over 2. At pi over 3, square root 3 over 2. And at 1/2, I'm at 1. And so those all went up, and then they all start to come back down. And so we're back at square root 3 over 2, back at square root 2 over 2, back at 1/2, back at 0. And then we go on the negative side of things. So, and all of these numbers are the same on the positive side as they are on the negative side. So down to negative 1/2, down to negative square root 2 over 2, negative square root 3 over 2, negative 1, negative square root 3 over 2, negative square root 2 over 2, negative 1/2, and back to 0. And so what I want you guys to see is that from 0 to pi over 2, like this is all quadrant 1 from the unit circle. This is all quadrant 2 from the unit circle. This is all quadrant 3 from the unit circle. And this is all quadrant 4 from the unit circle. And so we can also, like, as we talked about coterminal angles, that it's the same angle measure as we go around, what we can see here is that 11 pi over 6 is the same as negative pi over 6. And so as I go in the negative direction of my angle measures, this part here is still quadrant 4 from my unit circle. So over here and over here, those parts of those graphs look the same. And this is what we call periodic functions, where the period of the function starts repeating over and over and over again. And so you can also connect all of these points. They're all going to connect nicely on your graph, and you may also want to color code them so that that you can tell the difference between like which one's sine, which one's cosine, which one's tangent. And so hopefully you also see that the domain for this is negative infinity to positive infinity. My handwriting is going to be atrocious, sorry. Negative infinity to positive infinity. And then on the range, hopefully you can see this as well, that the bottom value is negative 1 and the top value is positive 1. And so this is going to be negative 1 included to positive 1 included. And so if you rewind your brain back to that very first unit that we talked about even functions and odd functions. And where if you take your picture and you flip it upside down, that would be an odd function. Or if you think these y values over here are the same as these y values over here, but opposite. So these are negative versions of these same positive versions, and so that makes this an odd function. So that is sine. That is our vertical distance on our unit circle. And now we're going to think through, okay, horizontally, so now we're looking at the x values, and so this one is going to start at 1. And so let's graph cosine as well. We'll do this in a different color. And so here, cosine is going to start at 1, and then we're going down from here. So same numbers, but they happen in different locations. And then when we cross over into quadrant 2, now our x values are negative. So over here they're positive, over here they're negative. And so let's keep going around down to negative square root 2 over 2, negative square root 3 over 2, negative 1, and then back up again. And so on your graph, like, I would follow along with this video and I would graph along with me. And the same thing is true here. Quadrant 1 of the unit circle, quadrant 2 of the unit circle, quadrant 3 of the unit circle, quadrant 4 of the unit circle, and then we're repeating quadrant 4 as we have negative angle measures. So this part here looks exactly the same as this part here. And so if you remember back from early in the year, when the y values on either side, so like the same positive y values and the same positive x values and the same negative x values have the same y values, that means that this function is going to be an even function. And so really these graphs, if you go back and forth between them, they look really similar. They're very, very similar graphs. They are just shifted left or right from each other. And so it's the same graph. It's going to keep going forever and ever and ever. And so my domain of this is also going to be negative infinity to positive infinity. And the range is going to go negative 1 included to positive 1 included. And so those are my two graphs for my sine and for my cosine.